When I was little, I always dreamed of the day I would get married. Like most children, I imagined a beautiful ceremony where family and friends would gather, where my parents would smile with pride, and where my happiness would mean something to them. But in my case, that dream didn't unfold as I had hoped. My parents never truly valued me the way they valued my siblings. They made it clear from the time I was young that I was not the child they pinned their hopes on. To them, I was ordinary, unimpressive, and unworthy of the kind of attention and love they reserved for the others. Still, despite all of that, I thought maybe, just maybe, something as important as a wedding would be the one event where they would finally show me that I mattered. I was wrong. When my wedding day arrived, they told me flat out that they would not be attending. Their reason? They said it was a trivial event for someone at the bottom. Those words cut deeper than any blade could. Imagine waiting for years for your parents' approval, hoping for even a scrap of validation, only to be told that one of the most important days of your life was meaningless because they didn't see you as worthy. I tried to process their cruelty, but the words echoed in my head in the days leading up to my wedding. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the way they dismissed my existence as if I had no right to celebrate love or happiness. I thought about all the birthdays they had skipped, all the school events where they hadn't bothered to show up, all the times they reminded me that I was not special. And yet, I still thought that a wedding, something sacred and once in a lifetime, might move them enough to stand by me. But when I stood at the altar and looked around, their absence was glaring. Every empty chair screamed of their disdain. Guests noticed too, some even asked where they were. And each time, I had to swallow my pride and answer vaguely, all the while feeling as though the hole inside me was widening. Afterward, when the ceremony ended and the celebrations wound down, I found myself spiraling between sadness and anger. For a moment, I considered reaching out, begging them to at least acknowledge what they had done. But then I stopped. Why was I still begging for their presence, their love, their acceptance? Hadn't I begged enough for an entire lifetime? They had made their choice, and in that choice, they had revealed the truth. To them, I was nothing. But to myself, I could be everything. Slowly, that anger hardened into resolve. I began to replay every instance where they had belittled me, where they had called me unworthy, where they had chosen others over me. And the more I thought about it, the clearer my path became. They thought I was at the bottom? Then I would rise higher than they could ever imagine, and I wouldn't need their applause when I did. The months after my wedding became the most transformative period of my life. I poured my energy into building a future with my partner, someone who had chosen to stand by me without hesitation. We worked hard together, investing time and money into creating stability. Every setback became fuel for my determination. Every memory of my parents' cruel words became a reason to push further. I wanted to prove, to myself more than to anyone else, that I was not worthless. I began to achieve milestones I once thought were impossible. Slowly, people who had once doubted me began to notice. My siblings, who had always parroted my parents' dismissive attitudes, started asking questions about how I was managing so well. Word traveled, as it always does in families, and soon enough, even my parents began to hear whispers of my success. It wasn't long before their attitude shifted. Suddenly, they wanted updates. Suddenly, they tried to reach out. At first, it was subtle, a text here, a phone call there, carefully worded to mask their intentions. But I knew them too well. They weren't reaching out because they regretted what they'd said. They weren't reaching out because they truly cared about me. They were reaching out because they saw that I was no longer the bottom child they could dismiss. I was someone who had risen despite their absence. And what's more, I had done it without them. That was their worst nightmare. They thrived on control, on the idea that my worth could only be defined by their recognition. But now, I had taken that power back. The first time they asked to meet up, I hesitated. A part of me, the wounded child inside, still longed to hear them say they were sorry. Still longed to see some recognition that they had wronged me. But when I sat across from them and heard their words, I realized that apology would never come, not sincerely, anyway. They danced around it, pretending as though their absence from my wedding had been a small mistake, a matter of bad timing, as though their cruel words had never been spoken. They wanted me to forget. They wanted to erase the past and step back into my life as though nothing had happened. But I couldn't allow that. Not after everything. So I did what they never expected. I smiled politely, listened to their excuses, and then told them the truth. I told them I didn't need them anymore. I told them I had spent too many years begging for their approval, too many nights wondering why I wasn't enough. I told them that their absence on my wedding day was the clearest message they could have sent me, and I had heard it loud and clear. They had shown me I wasn't important to them, and now, I was finally strong enough to return the favor. Watching their faces shift, the shock, the discomfort, the dawning realization that I wasn't bending anymore, it was more satisfying than any apology they could have given. From that day on, I made a vow to myself, I would no longer live in the shadow of their cruelty. My worth was not tied to their recognition. My happiness was not contingent on their presence. I had built a life of love, resilience, and success without them, and that was the ultimate revenge. And though they might regret missing my wedding, though they might regret underestimating me, those regrets are theirs to carry, not mine. Because while they were busy calling me at the bottom, I was busy climbing higher than they could ever reach. Sometimes, I still think back to that wedding day. I remember standing there, scanning the crowd, searching for faces that never showed. And instead of feeling the pain I once did, I feel gratitude. Their absence gave me clarity. Their rejection gave me freedom. And their cruelty gave me strength. So in the end, while they thought they had broken me, all they did was build the fire that carried me forward. The real question is, when the people who are supposed to love you the most show you they don't, what do you do? Do you let it define you, or do you rise and prove them wrong?